So welcome, Pat. We've just had this little preempt before our interview today about leading ourselves or leading you to grief. So I like the title of particularly our conversation right now.
Seems timely, yeah.
So welcome. I know you, Pat, as an amazing artist, so I'm pleased that you've got your artwork behind you there, and we may speak into those pieces or other pieces that you've created over time. I know you as a storyteller, a speaker, a clown. I know you as a neighbour. I know you as a friend. I know you as a workshop facilitator. I know you as lots of characters, and there's lots I don't know about you, of course. But I appreciate you for coming on to this, what is an interview series that I've labelled A Woman's Rite of Passage to Self-Love, as you're aware. So the other day I was out there walking as I do, and I started getting pain, and that's when I immediately thought of you, because I know you've experienced a lot of pain in your life in various forms. How about we start there as a starting point of our conversation today? So I'd love to talk to you first and foremostly about physical pain, because that's what I was personally feeling at the time. Tell us about what you have endured, is probably a word, in your life around pain.
Yeah, I mean, if we begin with physical pain, then we would revisit the last 18 months. Mm-hmm. I had a severe autoimmune condition arrive suddenly. Mm-hmm. All of my joints immobilized, hugely swollen, and a lot of deformity happened really quickly. I also developed psoriasis right alongside it, and I was really clear on where it had come from. I believe that arrived as a result of 35 years or more of suppressed anger, rage, resentment, grief, not brought to the fore. A lot of areas of my life I have expressed and given vent. I've done a lot of grieving for the losses that have occurred, but there was one incident in particular that my efforts to share that with family and people close to me didn't happen. And so a remark by my mother when I tried to tell her something about it, she said, well, it's very inconvenient, dear. We're going to your sister's today. Your sister's delivering James today. And I just shut up. It was like I just closed down in that conversation. And so I just kept it to myself right through until now. And, you know, I had a hip replacement, as you know. So I think that was the beginning. I really became aware, I think everything that I haven't expressed for some reason has been stored in my right hip. I don't know exactly why there, but certainly there were some messages, and I started to communicate with my hip in a way that I've never worked with my body before. Mm-hmm. I imagined a little archaeologist in there, a little hat and outfit on, and a little
an excavator.
Chipping away, polishing and dusting, and being really careful around that, as they are. And so that was probably my first deep journey in the lead up to having the hip replacement. And then before going into surgery, I had about 20 copies of a letter that I'd written to the team that I would see that day. And the letter was essentially saying, this is not just an ordinary hip replacement that you're doing today. You're actually supporting me to stand again, to see that I truly can support myself, that I can stand on my own 2 feet. A real reclaiming of my space. And each time I gave that to the anaesthetist, the surgeon, was a full moment for both.
You delivered this message to them?
I handed it out as I walked into surgery. You do these days. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so each person along that path, back in recovery, I had a little bundle beside my bed. You know, I recovered from that, but then I had problems, and I had some cellulitis, and you know, that was so. My doctor, Robin Kelly, said to me, well, you know, it's a medical emergency, so I'm going to have to admit you, but while I'm doing the paperwork, tell me what's going on. And I said, well, you know, I've been doing a lot of work to shift unresolved grief and resentment, and here it is, you know, that red, angry area all around the wound. You know, it was clearly a focal point for my body to release that, and that happened twice. So very interesting. And then post that, I started to recover, and then it was about 6 months later that I had this huge immune response.
Reaction.
So at the outset, I could barely walk. I cried nearly every day for a month. I was on about 2,400 milligrams of Brufen. That didn't hold the pain. I had tried other, you know, other medication, but they upset my gut. And I don't know why, but I was just called to talk to a crystal ball healer, lady that I knew, and she. I sort of don't know why I'm ringing you, but I'm just called to do so, and explained where I was at, and so she gave me some healing, and so this was my first. All the other events in my life, the, you know, various losses and trauma, had been external. Right. Everything about this experience was internal. There was like nothing out there to fix. This was within, and so I found that quite difficult in the beginning to know where to go. So having someone to guide you to get into your body, and then to see the magic of it. The healing that she gave me would give me 2 or 3 days relief. The swelling would reduce incredibly. In that initial period, it did come back after 2 or 3 days, but I got relief. So I had healing for about a month, and then I had enduring healing. So most of that was sound healing, but she also channels Aboriginal spirit. So there was that connection, which I felt deeply connected to. It brought tears each time, so a very emotional experience. So it felt very correct. And some other modalities, Reiki and Bowen therapy included. And so the first 6 months, I didn't see a lot of improvement. And so that period was really black, really black. I thought, I can feel the emotion of it now. I thought, if this is it, I'm done. I'm done, because I can't live with this. It's just
so intense and so exhausting.
So intense. And all that I had been in the bright, joyous person, you know, for the majority of my life, was gone, and it was just so dark. And you know, I had little choice but to rest. And felt very alone and separate, especially in that first 6 months. And then the hope came when I first started to see for myself and feel for myself, something's changed. Something's changed. And that was probably around the time that I had some healing called forensic healing. And it's not necessarily about going to the crime, but it is very deep investigative work. And the lady who treated me very quickly was able to go back to the time of my first child and connect with that period. So I lost my first child and daughter at birth. She was full term, but lots of complications with the delivery, and she didn't survive. And I was so grief-stricken. They did ask me numerous times would I like to nurse her, and I just couldn't. I felt I would die if I felt that pain. So I didn't. And she was buried.
The words that you've just used, Pat, because you've just described what you were feeling just recently with that intense period of pain and darkness, and those words that you've just used in relation to that experience with your daughter. You used exactly the same words.
Yeah.
I want to die, you know, or something around those words. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So a real connection to that event. Yeah.
Mm.
What I get is that there may be a lot of people out there who are living with pain, physical pain, and may not have come down the personal development and spiritual development track like you have. So are still there going, I just want to deal with my pain. Can you give me the nearest, closest painkiller or whatever? Yeah. If you could retrace some of your steps in your learning to where you've come now, knowing now that there's emotional stuff underneath pain, knowing now that there's grief stuff, knowing all what you know that at a soul level there's often pain. What are those early day steps that you now recognise as important? So I'm thinking, what can you be teaching the people out there who are dealing with it purely with painkillers now or an operation? What looking back would have been the next step for you, or something that you'd be recommending?
Well, I think when I lost my daughter, I did cry. I did grieve. And I felt I grieved very well, if you like. I allowed, I was in tears a lot, that first 12 months especially. So I feel that I was mostly grieving the loss. I wasn't grieving that which I had not embraced. You know, I'd never held her. So, and we are so, I think we are emotionally bereft without touch. If we don't have touch in our lives, then it's probably the darkest place to not experience, you know, the care and the love that comes through touch. Even, you know, just somebody rubbing our arm or touching our shoulder, or offering through gesture.
So would you say that experience of pain that you're describing right there is more intense than that physical pain that you experience, or it's a different pain?
I think it's different. I mean, pain is pain. And we all not everyone experiences the same kind of pain for different experiences in our lives. The loss of my daughter was huge. But like in 2001, I had a realization, and I had a naming ceremony, and I had buried my daughter as baby Armitstead, because that's what people did back then. And I called her Willow. So in that, there's, I don't think it matters. You know, nothing just goes away. So there's a succession of things. So knowing that things will resurface, that they'll come to the fore. But I committed that whatever came into my life from 2001 on, I would go to it. So that's been a huge learning for me to see, even though you don't like necessarily going head on to things, there's an incredible amount of closure and sense of completion, even if things are not healed totally in that like full sense. Because we've gone to it, then there is no more to do. You know, we've done what we need to do, rather than squash it down, lock it away, close off from it. Then we create this wall of resistance, and then that doesn't allow things into our life. So we are kind of trapped in this body, along with stored pain, and don't necessarily then find the ways to release it.
So what personally were practical, physical ways that you released pain out of your body?
In those earlier days, I probably didn't have as many skills then, like the time of the loss of my daughter, as I do this last 10 or 15 years. Back then, I went back to work, and which was nursing. So that was very good for me, because it allowed. I went back with a new sense of where all these people are at. They're in pain. It's different pain. They didn't just lose a child, but there is this pain present. So there was this huge extra awareness that I could bring to the bedside. And, you know, I so know as we minister into someone else's space, so we are contributing to our own. So being able to be of service somehow is a brilliant way to work your way through loss and pain. But you also need to nurture yourself. My first husband bought me a dog, an old English sheepdog. So there was another place to place my love. So finding that, you know, we don't invest our love in just one area. We love many things. So when we lose, while it seems huge and it's overwhelming and all-encompassing, it is actually only one aspect, and passage of time lets us see that a bit. So being able to love the dog, and I ended up showing the dog and entering competitions, and so that was a huge investment. I was probably quite physically fit back then, so I played squash. So there was a lot of physical shifting and movement, you know, to although I wouldn't have been conscious at that time that that was what I was doing. I also canoed.
Canoodled or canoed?
Sorry?
Canoodled or canoed? Probably a bit of both. Canoed.
So yeah, physical activities. So coming fast forward to now, in that early period and not being able to be active was a real wake-up call to just how painful the loss of self is, loss of movement, loss of ability. And I love my art, and I've already got there's some disfigurement in my fingers. And so, you know, it was a big thing for me I have to do whatever I can because I need my hands. You know, my hands are, you know, my biggest source of expression. And to not have that, I would again be bereft if I couldn't express. Before the beginning, we were talking about through this since 2001, I have used art to move through various stages of my personal growth. Initially, when I was feeling very wounded, I made lots of wounds on canvas, and each time that I did, it was another clearing, and I really got as it was put onto the page or the canvas, so it was done. Excuse me.
So creativity in some ways been your medicine, been your balm.
Yes. And, you know, the messages have come. The piece behind me, the hands that are clasped and the necklace, is actually a tribute to my mother. The necklace my father gave to her when she turned 21. Mm-hmm. And the hands, while they're just plain on the outside, on the inside, they're filled with images from the garden, life's garden, and kind of reflect my mum. She was fairly conservative, and yet on the inside there were all these fruits of the earth. And you can't see it in this image, but it actually on the canvas is a shadowy figure. Wow. And she has a black tulle dress, and she actually has shoes as well. So having some fun.
Too, Pat, and I've just seen it for the first time, and I've seen this many a time, but this time I'm seeing almost like a wreath around her necklace. I don't know what that's about, but there's definitely some kind of wreath in the shadows, how I see it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Hey, firsthand, I've experienced your work in your Good Grief program and the way that you support or have supported many people through their own versions of grief and their own experiences of grief, and that whole casting project. I'm so appreciative of the time that I spent with you doing that around my own breast lump and what was revealed around that pain for me, not a physical pain, but certainly some experiences in my life that led to that lump. And, you know, I appreciate that for what it is. Can you just tell our listeners today a little bit about that program that you created that has helped so many people in such powerful ways?
In 2004, 3 years after all of that succession of losses I had, 2001, I met 3 Jungian psychotherapists, and we worked together for a year, casting each other using a 6-inch plaster of Paris bandage.
Got out your nursing skills, hey? Got out your nursing skills.
Yeah, kind of. Casting each other's body parts relative to what was going on in our lives at the time. It was more about the process than looking at anything in particular. And sharing each what we knew about myths, legends, fairy tale, colour, crystals, and symbolism. And at the end of that time, so much change had happened for me. I had the idea of creating a Good Grief program, so supporting people through grief and loss, but using this casting process. And my understanding of what I was doing at the time was allowing the storytelling to unfold, capturing that then as each person cast each other and had reverence for what was been going on and where the pain had been stored in their bodies, and then removing the cast, and it's like a shedding process, like a snake shedding its skin, and then making art and making meaning of what had come up for each individual in that process. More recently, with the clients I've been working with, I'm really beginning to appreciate the depth of what can happen. One lady that we both know, Lee Roughton, she had major trauma in her family, and within a period of about 6 weeks, she truly became a walking example of forgiveness and compassion. And people around her were saying, "You're too good, we're worried about you, things are not right, I think you should be seeing somebody." Yet she did all the practical things that she needed to do, and the universe orchestrated that she and I and Deb Gillespie would be with her for 3 days. Wow. Deb supported myself. First time I had actually been supported, like in that one-on-one in that way. So I didn't need to do anything but be with Lee. And I think the funniest thing that happened over that time, many extraordinary results, but when the cast was removed and it was a full body from neck through to pubic area, if a rhinoceros could fart, that was, and it probably does,
Yeah.
then that was the sound that came as her cast was coming off. It was just extraordinary. And there might be some people who turn their nose up and think, oh, yeah, right. But I really got, that's how much energy was expelled, you know.
Well, there's something about that intense, thick skin of a rhino, you know. It's just layer upon, well, I imagine it's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, you know. It's not a little thin skin.
No.
No.
No. And, you know, she's gone on to really live into her life purpose in you know, extraordinary ways as a result. And so, you know, she still had a lot of healing to do. It's not to say that 6 weeks and she was done. It's not so. But 6 weeks, she had reached a place within herself that many people would envy in terms of being able to be in that place of having some compassion and forgiveness, but being able to do the work she needed to do to have her children safe, and then be in a very reverent place moving forward to allow her grief around all of it over time. Because the children were traumatized, so that, you know, there were ongoing things to be addressed as life rolled out. But she was in a very good space to be able to do that, and to be a very clear channel for you know, certainty around her values and her choices and the stand she was taking and who she could be for her children. And that was in the face of a lot of hanya stuff out there. You know, people making a noise and offering, you know, sometimes well-meaning advice, but sometimes criticism too. So, you know, she held herself so well through all of that. And, you know, she really demonstrated to me, yes, we will always grieve. We're human and it's part of our experience. But suffering is optional. It's different, you know. So, and in order, I think, to not suffer or not suffer for too long, then we need to be prepared to sink into it. And, you know, I think this last 18 months with my joints, probably a 12-month period where it was at its worst, having to accept from other people, Miss Independent, and being a request for help and support in a way I would never have before, has, you know, I'm seeing things unfold in my life now that have been part of a dream for 4, 5, 6 years or more, and they're now starting to come in. So it's like Eckhart Tolle had 4 years in a very depressed state before he wrote.
What I remember.
So, you know, there are. It's not a bad place, really.
So you're asking people or recommending to people to face that stuff, in particular that emotional undertone and that grief. But many people choose to dull that, medicate that, not express that through whatever means, alcohol, drugs, whatever. What was your own take on that? Is that one way that you thought about going or found yourself going?
How do you mean?
Well, you've chosen a more enlightened path, perhaps by looking at alternative health remedies, for example, looking at what is the emotional stuff underneath my pain. But, you know, others have gone down that other route. I'm probably asking, have you been down that other route that some people have, through drinking too much or through taking something that you know have taken, or have you found other addictive behaviours, patterns sort of come up within you?
I probably at times have used alcohol to some extent, but not in a big way, and certainly never drugs. I feel like goody two-shoes around drugs. I don't know where the message came from, but I got a message many years ago. The only way out is through. and so
You feel it, in other words, yeah.
yes. So I'm strongly sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a lot
Mm-hmm.
through my hands. Even as a registered nurse, I remember my first day as a sister, a nursing sister, walking into this 12-bed ward, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I don't need to ask them anything. I just know. So deeply intuitive, have doubted that on and off over the years. So that deep intuitive thing, a stronger connection now to how I sense, and we all have, a heightened sense in one way or another.
Mm.
And the universe tells you when you're not on track, In one 18-month period when I first came to New Zealand, I had 10 car accidents, about 6 weeks apart, It's like, oh, you don't get it yet. Oh, but here's another one.
You're in the Guinness Book of Records, Pat.
So, there. And what was that message about? Well, certainly it was about wrong path, not that way, Although 9 out of 10 of them were all at stop signs where someone drove up the back of me. So it was also a message about, you're being shafted, So where are you being done?
In your life.
So the need to come back in and really look at, I've been ministering out there very well to a lot of people all my life. Loved my years nursing. Even when I had an agency, still contributed a lot to my community. But didn't invest as much back into self.
So how has pain been your rite of passage then to caring for yourself more, for self-care, for Pat?
I think it's come it's probably come in the biggest way since 2001. My ex, when he left, said to me, no, I don't love you, and I never loved you. And I thought at the time, if that's true, then everything I've ever known is not true. And so I disintegrated.
Yeah.
And the years, even right through to now, have all been about my reintegration. Because it actually wasn't the truth, but that's how I took it.
Yeah.
So it shifted everything. And, the journey back, interesting that I found joy as my source, the joyologist,
exactly.
and to develop that. And there were some messages from the universe too. I got pigment. I lost pigment out of my skin, including a butterfly shape on my chest. And in the movie Patch Adams, when he's building Gesundheit and his girlfriend is shot, he goes and stands on the hill where he'll build Gesundheit, and a monarch lands on his briefcase and then flies up and lands on his chest. And that's true. That's a true story.
Did you say briefcase or briefcase? The briefcase or the briefcase? Yeah. Wow. And as we know you, Pat, we know you as that butterfly. Yeah. That is your source.
So, I know about transformation. There's been so many. And I've probably never acknowledged or honoured it like I have the last 18 months. A mutual friend and coach, Sally Anderson, said to me often, you don't earn your greatness, Pat. And I really get that. So to finally now be stepping into the largesse of what I've done and to own.
Yeah.
I did that. And, I'm a living example of you don't need the money. you know. I've been blessed with peaks and troughs in income, but so much of what I've done has been just by asking the question, not necessarily being in a place where I could exchange money in order for different things to happen. My old mentor, Mike Hutchison, used to say to me, "Oh, you're a hard woman to say no to, Pat."
So, Pat, you became the joyologist, the world's first joyologist, and I'm curious as to, can someone experience joy even when they're in pain?
I'm going to say something a bit controversial. I believe so. When I experienced all those losses back in 2001, I had the conversation when joyology came in. I was talking to a magician, and there was just a lull in the conversation. We just had stopped and were having a quiet moment, and the message just came. Oh my God, we've got radiology, pathology, hematology, but no joyology. I'm going to be a joyologist. And I had, previous to that call, been in a grieving seminar at Starship Hospital, Auckland's Children's Hospital, and there were 400 parents in the room who'd lost their children. So there was just this huge
Grief, I imagine.
goosebumps thinking of that time. Such sad energy in the room. And then I had this other conversation a couple of hours later, and I just got this image of a mood barometer. And it came to me, I think, that joy is all of it. The very fact that we have the capacity to experience this full range of emotions, and once we're aware and willing, to be able to use that as a guide for being in this world, and developing ourselves to our core. We start to shine. We become a guiding light, and sometimes we're not aware of that. But as we continue to do this, then and we divest of the stored stuff, then more and more we become attractive, and that's not about being good looking.
Or it can include that.
There's something in the quality, and we just know. We meet people, and we just know you've something's happened to you. You've been through life, and we can tell, we can feel, sense, and it's because of that those people can be so present and so contribute, not necessarily just advice, but by merit of what they've been through and what that can bring out in them. So it's not just what comes from the tongue and well-meaning advice, but that whole energy.
Exactly. And Pat, just on a final note, I just want to honour and love you for that energy that you're describing, but the energy that you offer, and the inspiration and the uplifting that you offer and have offered thousands and thousands upon thousands of people. And you know how you've done that through some of your writing, through some of your speaking, through some of your personal notes that you write people, through your connecting of people around the world, much of which has been unseen, which you just talked about, but you are seen. So thank you, Pat. We so appreciate you for who you are, and for your wisdom today, and for being Pat. Thank you. Thank you. So Pat, there will be people who just relate to you and resonate with you and some of your experience in life and some of what you offer people. How can people be in touch with you?
Well, they can search for Pat Armitstead on Facebook. My website is still called joyology.co.nz. And I'm living in Brisbane, Australia now. So anyone who's in that area can look me up.
Thank you so much, Pat. Bye for now.
Bye.